Good morning. Good morning, everyone. And glad to see you all here today, and a special welcome to those who are joining us for the first time. Um, during the past few weeks, we've been talking about this writing of 13th century Zen Master Dogen, a Japanese teacher who is considered founder of the Soto Zen sect. And Dogen's writings are complicated, difficult, deep, complex. Um, the section of the Mountains and Waters Sutra that I'd like to talk about today is somewhat lengthy. So I'm going to just take some excerpts from it and make comments about those excerpts, with hopes of generating some considerations, some discussion in the latter part of the hour. So we'll start with the first excerpt here. Wensi said, "The path of water is such that when it rises to the sky, it becomes raindrops. When it falls to the ground, it becomes rivers. The path of water is not noticed by water, but is realized by water. It is not unnoticed by water, but is realized by water." So what is this Wensi? There was it's a writing that is dated back to 5th century BCE in China. And it seems to be describing here the water cycle, something we all may have learned about in grade school or high school, about how water evaporates and then it condenses and then it falls and again, the water cycle. So as is Dogen's usual practice, he takes this little snippet and runs with it. The water is used as a metaphor for probably a number of things, including, though, the Dharma, the reality unblemished by our notions. And he says that water is water. It's just being water. It's just doing what water does. It's just being natural without any kind of pretensions. It's just water being water. So Dogen is, of course, using the words water, but he's not talking about water. He's always talking about practice. He's talking about living a human life. All of his teachings are about that. And I would venture to say all of the Buddhist teachings are about that. How do we live our lives? So he's saying water is water, just being water. So it's like saying Will is Will, or Peggy is Peggy, or Bob is Bob. You've all probably had the experience of either being at a musical recital or perhaps participating in a musical recital yourself, where the child or the adult, whoever it is, gets up and starts playing a piece that he or she has practiced so many times that they're probably sick of it. And they get halfway through and there's sort of a missed note or a blunder, and then things just start to deteriorate. Self-consciousness sets in. And then the child or the adult is no longer him or herself, but just a mess of concerns and worries and embarrassment. So in this first section, I think Dogen is encouraging us to just be ourselves, whatever that is, whatever limitations and flaws may be present. The second excerpt goes like this: water exists inside fire and inside mind, thought, and ideas. Water also exists within the wisdom of realizing Buddha nature. Even where there is not a river or an ocean, there is water. It is just that when water falls down to the ground, it manifests the characteristics of rivers and oceans. So what we think of as water, lakes or rivers or puddles, or that's one manifestation of water. But water is also everywhere else: water vapor, humidity, clouds, moisture in the soil, water in our bodies, our body fluids, our blood, etc. Inside and outside, water. And again, he may be talking about water, but he's also talking about Buddha nature, Dharma nature, reality. It's everywhere. It's not just confined to Dharma talks. It's not just confined to altars or temples or priests. So it's everywhere to be found, just like water. Another water metaphor appears in the Lotus Sutra. The Lotus Sutra is a fantastical piece of work, with various stories and quotations reportedly by the Buddha. It may be apocryphal, but that doesn't detract from its truth value, and it's been a text that has inspired people for centuries. And a little section from the Lotus Sutra, the 5th chapter, is: I bring fullness and satisfaction to the world like a rain that spreads its moisture everywhere, eminent and lowly, superior and inferior, observers of precepts, violators of precepts, those fully endowed with proper demeanor, those not fully endowed, those of correct views, of erroneous views, of keen capacity or dull capacity. I cause the Dharma rain to rain on all equally, never lax or neglectful. So even in situations when that seem to be kind of awful, the Dharma is present and potentially accessible to our minds. And cause the Dharma rain to rain on all equally. So one doesn't have to be clever or even virtuous. The third selection I would like to talk about is this short excerpt. Also, do not think that where water forms rivers or oceans, there is no world and there is no Buddha land within water. Even in a drop of water, innumerable Buddha lands appear. So this theme appears repeatedly in Dogen's writing. And to me, it has to do with the irrelevance of scale. The irrelevance of scale. That even in small acts or in seemingly insignificant individuals, Buddha lands arise. The Dharma is present. So you don't have to be a VIP or attendant at COP27 to express the Dharma. Yesterday, I had an interesting experience. Some of you may know, I've been, since my retirement, I've been driving a truck for the food pantry on Fridays. And that's all gone fairly well up until yesterday. And yesterday I had an incident. I was behind the Schnuck store in Overland, and I had loaded the truck, and I was getting ready to turn the truck around to leave and go to the next store. And backing up the truck in order to turn around, I felt a bump. It didn't seem like a big bump, but I heard something and felt something. So I put the vehicle in park and went back to see what was going on, because I didn't think I could have hit anything. But to my surprise, I had hit the guardrail, the steel guardrail, the low steel guardrail at the edge of the parking area where the trucks come and go to load and unload. And a portion of the lift mechanism at the rear of the truck was kind of stuck on the other side of the guardrail, such that if I would have pulled the truck forward, it could have either ripped off the lift mechanism, which cost about as much as a car, or some other thing might have happened. I don't know. But I really felt stuck. And it seemed to me like I would either have to disassemble the guardrail or somehow jack the truck up and lift it over the guardrail. It's a stainless steel guardrail, very strong. So the store manager came out, or the receiving manager came out, and we were kind of trying to put together tools to disassemble the guardrail, which was unsuccessful because the bolts were corroded, and it wasn't made to be disassembled. It was just made to be assembled. And to make matters worse, a truck came up, one of the large 18-wheeler trucks, the Schnucks trucks, and the driver was there just waiting because I was blocking his way to get into the loading area where he could unload his truck. So it did not feel good. And I was getting ready to, call back to home base and see if we could get some, a tow truck to come out to do something. And the driver of the Schnucks truck got down, and I was sitting in the driver's seat of my truck at that time, and he got down, and I could see him going back to look at the situation. And he gave instructions. He told me to turn the wheel one way and back up just a little bit, and then turn the wheel the other way and go forward just a little bit, and back up and go forward. So I trusted him. I wasn't sure what he was trying to tell me to do, but I trusted him. And we went through this for several minutes, and I had no idea what was going on. But suddenly my truck was free, and I could pull forward, and I went back and looked, and everything looked okay. And in retrospect, what he had told me to do was kind of walk the truck along and get to the end of the guardrail and come off the end. I had not seen that as a possibility at all. But in that moment, when I felt completely flummoxed and really quite dismayed, a bodhisattva appeared, and there was the Buddha land. The truck driver could have been completely different. The truck driver could have gotten out and started screaming at me for blocking his way and delaying his, work and all kinds of things he could have done. And probably some people would have handled it that way. But this truck driver expressed the Dharma in that way. And I was very, very grateful, needless to say. So one kind act or one kind word is a full expression of the Dharma. One drop of the ocean has the same taste as the whole ocean. The next little excerpt The existence of water is not concerned with past, future, present, or the phenomenal world. Yet water is actualization of the fundamental point. Where Buddha ancestors teach, water never fails to appear. Because of this, Buddha ancestors always take up water and make it their body and mind, make it their thought. I guess what I'd like to focus on in this excerpt is the phrase actualization of the fundamental point. This is a phrase that Dogen uses repeatedly. In fact, one of the fascicles of his writing that we've studied in the past was entitled this. It's called the Genjo Koan, but actualization of the fundamental point. Now that Genjo Koan, the translation of that and the meaning of it is a topic of many articles, and many experts have given opinions about it. But in his excellent commentary on the Mountains and Waters Sutra, Okamura points out that Genjo, the word most literally means appear, appearance. It's translated as actualization or realization often, but appear. And koan. Now, the word koan, usually in a Zen context, we think about the little Zen teachings that are teaching devices that are used called koans, where like does a dog have Buddha nature, or the sound of one hand clapping, or those sort of things. But Dogen uses a different character for the on part of the word koan. And Okamura points out that Senna translated this as Senna was an early commentator on the Mountains and Waters Sutra, and he talks about this being a public work, and Okamura points out that most literally, looking at the characters, it's to place a hand on something, to appear and place a hand on something. So I guess I think about that in terms of just showing up. I'm sure all of you are familiar with, if you've been reading the news at all, you know about Senator-elect John Fetterman in Pennsylvania. And I'm not going to talk about politics. So you can disagree with him or not, or agree with him or whatever. That's beside the point. But I'm talking about the fact of a man, a person who had a stroke in last May and was left with certain deficits, what they call auditory processing disorder, where he hears things, but he doesn't quite understand them. He can read them and understand them, but he can't hear them and understand them. Or speech problems, where he has problems with word finding. He just can't quite think of the right word to say. So it was getting close to the end of the campaign, and it was time for a debate. And he showed up, knowing full well that he had these deficits and it would affect his performance. And when asked why he did this, he said, well, I thought it was important to show up. I thought it was important to show up. So I think Dogen is just encouraging us here in part to just show up and do what we can, regardless of whether we're in top form, regardless of whether we've practiced enough, regardless of whether we feel like we have all the capabilities we would like to have, to just show up and take care of whatever situation is in front of us. And I'll end with this last little excerpt. One Buddhist sutra does say, fire and air go upward, earth and water go downward. This upward and downward require examination. The phenomenal world does not actually exist in terms of up, down, or the cardinal directions. The heaven of no thought should not be regarded as upward, nor the Avicii hell as downward. The Avicii hell is the entire phenomenal world. The heaven of no thought is the entire phenomenal world. Well, there's a lot here we could talk about, but I'll kind of cut it short because we are getting close to the time I wanted to allot. The heaven of no thought, that can sometimes be translated as the heaven of no conceptions or the heaven of no notions. In other words, in a way, seeing things without being preoccupied. The Avicii hell refers to just an early Indian cosmological concept of the lowest or the deepest levels or the darkest parts of hell, kind of comparable to the lowest realms of Dante's Inferno. But I think the point here that I take from this is that the notions of up and down and north and south and east and west, etc., are notions that we impose upon reality. It's a Cartesian set of Cartesian coordinates that we superimpose upon our reality to sort of orient ourselves, with conveniently ourselves in the center. And but it really is not something that exists in the phenomenal world. It's a notion or something we make up. It's a fabrication. So there may be ups and downs and sides to sides, but it's all just our life. And it's all just there to be taken care of. And it's all just there for us to show up for and do what we can. So I guess I'll stop there with the question about, I mean, what, if anything, in all of this resonates with you? And what do you think Dogen is trying to tell us with all this metaphorical language about water? So I think we'll stop there and maybe just go into two breakout groups for a little discussion for a few minutes before we reconvene and finish up.
next.